with that, we'll get to the one of the lead stories of the day, and that is, where's Mitch Marner going? And this is a story that's going to continue probably until July 1st. He is Dave Pagnotta, the fourth period hockey insider, joins me now on the sheet. Dave, you're in Edmonton. First of all, before we get to Marner, I'm guessing like there's an electricity in Edmonton right now. It's kind of like every Saturday night in Montreal where every restaurant, every cafe, every gym, every bar, everywhere you go, they're talking about the Oilers in the Stanley Cup final. True or false?
It's so far true, and there's Oilers merch and memorabilia and stickers and posters and balloons and
Yeah.
everywhere. In the airport when you get there, to just down the street from where I'm at, the arena is just a couple blocks away.
Yep.
This entire area is already jam packed, and with Oilers memorabilia, Oilers colors, Oilers everything.
Yeah.
It's going to be nuts. This entire week going into game one, at least on Monday.
You know, one of my favorite things to do, maybe you do this at rinks, maybe you do this at large hockey gatherings where there's a lot of people wearing jerseys. I always try to find the most unique jersey in the room, the one that's like the throwback, like the, oh man, look at that old Lee Fogelin oil drop jersey from back in the day. I don't know if that's a pursuit of yours, or maybe I'm just, that bored and need to look for things to do. But does that sort of, have you seen any like old school Oilers jerseys yet? Or are you still on the Draisaitl
Not
McDavid's?
No, not yet, not yet. I've only been here a few hours. I got here this morning, but I do that when I go to different games. I try to find the most obscure jersey, and then
Yes.
try to find the most obscure player for the team of whatever home crowd. Like the one guy that played 20 games, and people got jerseys of that player. We're all
Yeah.
hyped up about it. I try to find like that kind of player. Like in Toronto, like there's a few like Brian Leach, Owen Nolan's,
Sure.
Ron
Yeah.
Francis kind of roaming around. My buddy was big on Owen Nolan, so pulled him in and got his jersey like the day after they acquired him. So I try to find like those kinds of random ones.
My favorites are the one, and I'm trying to think of a good example. Like when Sam Gagner was traded, he went to Tampa. He
Yeah,
was a Tampa Bay Lightning for like 2 hours and then got moved to Arizona. So I'm always like waiting to see if anyone's like hipster enough to have the Sam Gagner Tampa Bay Lightning jersey. Those are always very
right.
quietly my favorites. Guys that were there, or like the Olaf Kolzig Toronto Maple Leafs. Like technically he was traded
Right.
there, but never played a game. Like that kind of hipster stuff. But I digress. Speaking of Maple Leafs, you had a couple of interesting, always good information you're putting out. The most recent involving Mitch Marner and locations where he could be headed. And I always wonder about, okay, so what are we missing here? There's always one that's sort of lurking in the weeds. But as far as you've been able
Yeah.
to glean and process, throwing darts at the map here around North America, where should we be looking at darts to land?
I think there's a couple in the Western Conference that are going to pursue. I think one more heavily than the other, and that are both teams that Marner would absolutely consider signing with. Those two being the Los Angeles Kings and the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, I put LA ahead of the pack. I believe the Kings are one of the teams. Both of these teams are, but one of the teams that are probably propped a little bit higher on Mitch's list. I think he's got an internal list of teams that he would definitely consider, and then kind of an expanded list based on what happens July 1, what kind of offers get presented, what kind of conversations they have. But I think LA is absolutely a team and a market that he is interested in exploring, and I think the Kings are going to be fairly aggressive in pursuit of him, assuming he does in fact hit July 1, like myself and a lot of people expect.
Yeah,
I think Vegas is absolutely in that discussion as
I agree
well.
with that. Yeah.
It's going to be difficult because they've got some cap issues and some. They're going to have to get a lot of. They're going to juggle. They're going to have to juggle. Like
Sure.
right now, they're shopping Nick Hague, and they've been taking calls. They've been making others, and he's an RFA. He doesn't even count towards the cap next year. So they're going to have to get
Yeah.
creative in how this goes. And they had conversations last summer. I know there were reports of Shea Theodore and them not wanting it. My understanding is William Karlsson was part of the discussion at one point as
Hmm.
well, and he's got some no trade protection. I believe that also played a factor.
Sure.
in that whole discussion. But I think those are two, and then you're going to see teams that have the cap space that want to be aggressive, Jeff. And I think you're looking at Carolina, you're looking at Anaheim, San Jose, Chicago, and Utah. Among others, because there's a long list. I think Philly,
Yeah.
like there are going to be a lot of teams that are going to approach this guy and his camp.
Let me go back to one team that you just named there a second ago, and I think that this is a team that's going to try again. It's going to be really hard, but I think this is a team that's going to really try to aggressively in an off season rather, Dave, where like the free agent class isn't the best that we've ever seen. And Marner leads that class. But I think there's one team that's really going to try to take a major swing, and they haven't for a long time. And you just mentioned the Anaheim Ducks a second ago. I think that they are poised. Listen, for Pat Verbeek, I mean, for the team, I think it's 7 years, and for Pat, it's 3.5. And, is some of the shine sort of coming off, and do they need to take that next step? What does ownership expect out of this Anaheim Ducks team? And at times, certainly towards the end of the season, they started to look really good. Some players have emerged. Jackson Lacombe has really emerged. I think you're waiting for Mason McTavish to take the next step in his career. But nonetheless, like I don't know that Marner wants to go anywhere other than a team that right away is going to be competing for the Stanley Cup. But I would have to think that Anaheim is going to step up and take a major swing here.
I absolutely believe that. I think they've got a ton of cap space and a willingness to spend it, in the right manner. And I think approaching Mitch Marner and his camp falls under that category. I absolutely think they're going to be aggressive. Now, I don't know. Like you were saying, I don't know if that's an environment, if that's a market and a team, given where they're at right now, that he wants to be in. Does he want to wait a little bit before they get legitimately competitive, or does he want to go right into the fire right out of the gate, like in LA or Vegas or Carolina or whomever? So that's kind of what he's going to have to juggle. But I absolutely believe Anaheim's going to be very much in play. I think Utah as well is going to be very much in play to try to make something happen there. Among the other clubs, we know Carolina wants to be aggressive. I get mixed signals when I try to ask people close to Marner's camp about a few teams, and one of them being Carolina. So we'll see. Obviously, there's a lot of runway here, and we'll see how teams get creative. Do any of these clubs try to acquire his rights? And if they do, Mitch still has a no move until his contract expires. So he still has a say in that regard as well.
How much does the 8th year matter to Marner, do you think?
I don't think it does. And with respect to acquiring his rights, I don't mean in a sign and trade. I just mean getting a head start in negotiations. Like if Anaheim, for example, feels like they can make a compelling case, can they acquire his rights for a draft pick to try to get him, knowing – because I think Mitch is going to July 1 no matter what. Mm-hmm. But is it worth it for a team like the Ducks or Utah or whomever to give up some draft capital, to get a head start, to make a heck of a case to try to get him in there and maybe give them a head start and maybe an edge on another club? But again, Mitch technically still has to say whether or not he even wants to do that.
Columbus a factor here? I mean, we know that last time around contract negotiations that Blue Jackets were right there saying, here's a pen. Would you like to sign this? Columbus, perhaps?
They've got the money. And again, they're not afraid to take those financial steps. That's what I'm curious about. I haven't heard much, quite frankly, and just speaking honestly, I haven't heard much from their side just yet. Maybe I will, maybe I won't ahead of July 1, but their money situation, their cap situation makes it intriguing. Same like the Sharks. I think the Sharks will at the very least make a decent pitch here to try to convince him to maybe it's not necessarily an offer, but at least go after him and they've got the luxury of that cap space. Columbus certainly does. Are they willing to go that similar route? It's one that I'm certainly curious about.
It's interesting, Dave. All these teams that we're talking about all have one thing in common. They're all American. Is there any chance that Mitch Marner has any interest? And listen, we know the Toronto experience. We know what that's like. We understand what that gauntlet can be like for a player, for a coach, for a manager, for anybody. Is there any chance that there's a Canadian team out there?
Um, I think Calgary will express interest. I think the Montreal Canadiens will express interest. Um, Whether those are environments he wants to go in and be part of, I didn't honestly. I don't really get that sense. The Toronto experience, as you said, is yes, certainly something that steals a lot of the spotlight, and yes, it's pressure cooker, this and that, but so are a lot of these other markets, especially Montreal. For example, I think there are other elements that occurred over Marner's tenure here, especially lately, and as latest as this playoff run, that affected him and his family off the ice. I think there were some fans can be a little ruthless, fans can be a little daring. Some fans take it a little too far. And I think that played a bit of a factor here for him on this latest run. And I think that's going to factor into his decision being in a market that is as crazed as that. This is a totally different beast than people throwing stuff on the ice and jerseys and booing and this, that, and the other. I think guys can deal with that kind of stuff. It's the other off-ice element that factors in. So I do think Calgary has interest in pursuing. I think the Canadiens will take a stab. But I don't get the sense right now anyway that he's overly interested, and him and his camp are overly interested in exploring those avenues. I think a lot of it is going to be south of the border.
So I had an interesting conversation with someone yesterday morning while I was walking my dog. And this person is convinced, and it's a Canadian team, is convinced, and this would all be mainly ownership driven, that there is one Canadian team that this person believes will take a serious run at Mitch Marner. He said Michael Andlauer is a very competitive person. And they have cap space. And, there's a Claude Giroux question still to be answered there for Ottawa. But by and large, their forwards are all done. Like, those contracts are done. He said he's of the mind and doesn't know if it'll get there, but that the Ottawa, Maple Leafs fans right now want to close their ears. Just the chaotic thought of Mitch Marner signing with the Ottawa Senators, Dave. Do you have a thought? We all know how I got to know Michael Andlauer when he was an owner in the Ontario Hockey League. I know how competitive this guy is, and the stakes are even higher here. And this would be right in the sweet spot of the bat for Michael Andlauer. You have a thought on that one?
Yeah. It's twofold. It's one, you get the best player in the free agent market that just scored 102 points, and you get him the hell out of Toronto. So it's a double win for the Sens. I wouldn't be surprised if they take a stab. I think there are going to be a lot of teams that are going to call up as soon as they have that opportunity to and say, "We're serious about this. Are you going to consider us?" And maybe here's a few bullet points as to why, and then we'll give you the full package after. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't shock me if it's Ottawa. Again, every sense I get is I would be surprised if any of if Calgary, Ottawa, Montreal, barring a significant dollar value, are going to get into the serious race here with respect to Mitch Marner. I think he's set on a couple markets, or a few markets, excuse me. Mm-hmm. A couple of them I mentioned earlier. I'd be very surprised if first of all, if he stays on the East Coast of the Canadian side of things, Ottawa or Montreal, that would be very, very surprising for me.
Maybe it's just Occam's razor, and it's Carolina at the end of the day. We know he's interested, and maybe Maple Leafs and their fans will say, what, he wouldn't waive to go to Carolina in the Rantanen deal, and now he's signing in free agency. Oh, it's a double burn. Listen,
and the other
go ahead.
The other fun connection, like we know how big of a Doug Gilmour fan he was.
Massive.
Dougie played on the Habs. Maybe that's their edge. I'm reaching. I'm being silly.
Played on the Flames too.
Good point. Yeah, started out there.
Keep going there. St. Louis Blues. We can throw that in there.
Yeah.
And he played his junior in Cornwall, not in London. Okay, so scratch that one off. Nonetheless, Dave, this is great. Listen, enjoy the first week of the Stanley Cup Finals. We will check back regularly. Thanks so much for this update. Really appreciate it. If you enjoyed that video, and we certainly hope that you do, please hit the subscribe button right there here at Daily Faceoff. I will put this lineup up against any hockey lineup anywhere. It all gets underway at 9 o'clock Eastern with Morning Cup of Hockey. That is Johnny Lazarus. That is Colby Cohen. Then at noon, it's DFO Live. And then 3 o'clock Eastern, The Sheet. Get caught up on everything in hockey.